So, Kif, thank you very much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But before we walk into the future, can you please share a little bit about your background? Where did you grow up?
Sure, no problem. And good to be here, Dr. Nick. Thanks for the opportunity. So I grew up in a very small town in the south coast of KZN called Ankumas. It's more for a rural community, but at the same time had its own challenges, but also created opportunities for many people that have progressed from a pretty small town.
And can you tell us what was your dream career when you grew up?
Yeah, like I think like most kids, it was quite adventurous going from wanting to be an astronaut and get into space and all those other cool things. However, it very quickly progressed when I got into computers. So my dad worked for an oil and gas company, and at the time they weren't providing him with the learning he needed to be computer literate. So when I was about 8 years old or 9 years old, he did something which was quite unique. He brought all these computer manuals back home, which was purely based on DOS and basic programming before we even got a computer. And then when we got our first 286 computer, I was completely blown away. I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I knew that somehow it had to be involved with technology and computing at the time. And that was kind of my start in terms of getting into this space as well.
And Kif, who inspired you in your early days?
Look, again, coming from a small town, and not knowing many people growing up, the people that inspired me the most has been my mom and dad. So my mom and dad have always been there for me, still today as well. The both of them did not have any university degrees. My dad was the one that worked. We had two other siblings. My sisters, one of my sisters passed away. And growing up as a small family, I think there was a lot that my family inspired me to do and to progress in terms of my career. However, looking at their background and thinking about the tenacity and the resilience they had due to many ups and many downs, they really inspired me. And one of their goals was for all their children to grow up, to find their purpose and to lead better lives. So they were an inspiration to me then when I was growing up, and they still are an inspiration to me today.
Now, today, Kif, you are one of the South Africa's foremost leaders in IT and tech. I believe you started your career at Maxtech, right? And
Yeah.
then you moved to Oracle, SAP, and now Workday. Looking back over your career, Kif, would you say there was a turning point, or maybe a number of turning points?
Look, there's definitely many moments that were turning points for me. I think the biggest one was I was still in KZN, and I was working in Metro Rail at the time. I think it was the year 2000, and I wanted a break. I knew that I wanted to get into the technology space. I knew that I had skills that I could offer the market, and I started applying for many positions to many companies, and actually had a black shoebox. And back then, when you applied for jobs, it was predominantly done with post. So I had many rejection letters in this box. And it was tough at the time because I was still pretty young and I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to create change in my life. So I moved to Johannesburg in 2001. And my brother-in-law gave me a book, which was the top 100 IT companies in South Africa. So I had to make a decision in terms of what I want to do in my life, and I applied to all 100 companies
Wow.
with my CV. Some of them were emailed, but most of them were done by post. Only two of them came back to me for an interview, and one of them was my first company that I worked for, which was Maxtech, and I was with them for close to 6 years. So that was a big turning point for me because that career opportunity that I had at Maxtech really taught me about sales, strategy, operations, leadership, and how to build effective teams and lead a good business unit as well.
Now, Kif, I see you recently co-authored a white paper on hybrid working, and I believe you wrote your thesis on the proximity bias.
That's correct. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more, since these factors are becoming more and more important in today's workplace?
It was an interesting journey. I decided to do my MBA when COVID hit. It was quite intentional. So when the world was going crazy and everyone was trying to work out what was taking place, I made an intentional and deliberate decision to invest in myself by doing my MBA with the University of Henley. And going through that process and managing a team at the time in a hybrid fashion, managing a team virtually really challenged me. And I did my MBA virtually as well, which was also another challenge. And when I got to dissertation, I spent a lot of time thinking about, okay, what would be an appropriate topic? And then I really thought about hybrid working and where this was going. So I took a bit of a design thinking process over a few days. And then I understood that this thing existed, this thing called proximity bias, which is still pretty new in South Africa, but quite well known globally. And what this concept is about is that subconsciously, some managers accidentally provide favoritism to individuals or employees that they see more often face to face. So the impact of this is that, especially if you're working in a hybrid environment and you have people working in remote locations or working remotely, they might not be privy to some information being shared in a meeting or understand the company's growth or projection. And sometimes in a sales perspective, even when it comes down to simple things like leads. So the thesis was based around that and understanding the impact of proximity bias, the impact of hybrid working, and also some tips and tricks in order to mitigate that moving forward.
Thank you. So, Kif, what would you say is driving you today in your career and in life?
Yeah, so quite a bit. I think anybody that knows me that as being a positive person, always trying to look for solutions and not focus on the problem. And I think based on that, it just comes down to a key principle of mine, which is just mindset. So I really believe in having a growth mindset or having a positive mindset, or even having a CEO mindset. And I read the other day that if you have a CEO mindset, you've got to understand that CEO sometimes could stand for change equals opportunity. So I think when you have a positive mindset and you embrace the problem, you understand the problem, and then you take the problem and look for opportunities, that really changes the game in terms of how you approach everything in life, not just on the professional side, but on the personal side as well. The other thing is I'm really passionate about people. So I love to watch people grow. So I coach and mentor a lot of our colleagues at work, but I'm also quite privileged to coach and mentor a lot of executives within our industry, locally and globally. And I think when you mentor and coach people and you see that when somebody can change their mindset, and seeing the direct impact it has to them individually and how they contribute towards a business, it's quite amazing. So my personal philosophy is that if you grow people, then you are able to grow business. And I think in a South African context, that's so crucial as well. We need to look at investing in terms of our people and seeing them grow. So I think what's underpinning that is that I feel we all have hidden potential. And my job as a leader and as a human being with the people that I work with is to try and unlock their potential and make them understand that this is really exponential at the same time. So the sky is not the limit, but the mind is. And that's what drives me on a day-to-day basis.
Okay. Can we quote you on that? The sky is not the limit, but the mind.
I read it the other day. MTech actually posted it on LinkedIn, but it's something that I've always believed in. But yeah.
Great. Thank you. Now, Kif, as one of South Africa's foremost future-minded leaders, can you tell us, and I know you touched on it already, but what exactly does the future of leadership mean to you?
Yeah, sure. So I think when you, before you even get to the future, if you take the word leadership and you break up the word, you've got to be able to lead the ship. And you've got to be able to lead at the front and lead by example. And I think that's the first thing that everyone needs to understand, which is a core basic principle. And I think the underpinning thing to that is you've got to take the people with you, because people are definitely part of the journey. And I love the fact that when you understand the dynamics of people and what drives them, and if you can unlock again that hidden value and that potential, then you're able to do so. I think what's going to be key for future of leadership, though, is it needs to be very much purpose-driven rather than driven purely based on profits, which is really hard in the world that we're living in when shareholders, stakeholders, board members have requirements from companies in terms of how to grow. And that's typically and traditionally based on profitability. But coming back to the fact that if you grow people, then you grow a business, I think that's a key philosophy. So if leaders are more purpose-driven based on that, I think it's a step in the right direction. I think the other one is we have to be adaptable and we need to be agile, especially in the world we're living in right now. So COVID was the best litmus test for us all to understand that. We had to go virtual pretty much very quickly. Business models needed to change. Our understanding of how to do business changed. And that really pushed everyone to the brink in terms of being able to do so. Now, as the world changes and as the South African economy changes and new competitors come out and technology like AI needs to be embraced, so too leaders need to be agile and being able to adapt to changing times. And changing times also is a change in the workforce. You know, with the Gen Z being here is being able to understand how to unlock the value in them. I think two other aspects for me. The other one is diversity. So diversity for me stems much, inclusion and diversity for me stems much greater than just race, color, and creed. But it's also to embrace diverse thinking and diverse approach in terms of how to do things. And there's a lot of data out there that talks about the fact that diverse teams outperform non-diverse teams by 80%. So I think what's going to be key for the future of leadership is being able to, for leaders to understand how to tap into that potential of having a more diverse team and understanding that it's quite linear, that this is going to lead to some positive results. Coming back to being adaptable and being agile, I always like to look at AQ, the adaptability quotient. So it's, you know, most leaders typically have very high IQ, numbers driven, purpose driven in terms of understanding how a company needs to be profitable and looking at the bottom line. But when you bring in elements like emotional intelligence, that's when you really are able to connect with employees better, having empathy, having effective communication, understanding the emotions of what makes people tick. And I think if you bring that through, and if the future of leadership is, for me, going to be a lot about AQ, being able to adapt to the situation and adapt to the people and teams, and that's going to be there. I think the last aspect is just resilience. It's something that we possibly don't focus a lot on. Stress is always going to be there if you're a manager or a leader, but you have to be resilient during tough times. And you have to gear yourself up to the fact that in a changing world, resilience is required now more than ever.
Now, Kif, looking back over your own leadership journey, what have you learned that you consider most important for building future leaders? In other words, what do we have to do to encourage, to empower, uplift future leaders?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for me, some of my learnings during my journey has been it's okay to fail, but you got to fail fast and you got to fail frequently. I think failing slow is quite costly. So as a leader, you have to be very decisive and make decisions. And indecisions could cost you a lot more in the long term. So that's definitely what's key for me. I think the other thing is that, again, coming back to adaptability, if you aren't able to move at the rate and pace of change that the world is, or business is, then you are going to fall behind. So you need to set yourself to be able to be more agile in terms of that. I think the other thing is that you need to practice continuous learning. And I, love the fact that there's so many different learning tools that are available right now from Blinkist and other cool apps that provide book summaries. And the one commodity that we all don't have enough of is time. So I love learning. I embrace it every day. If I find a new anecdote, it's something that I write down and keep it into my OneNote file. But there has to be continuous learning, which I think needs to be there. And if you continuously learn, then it means that you're curious. So you got to stay curious. I think that the other elements that come in is that you also got to practice critical thinking, just to make sure that everything you're practicing, everything you might be executing on, goes against a vision, strategy, and a mission, and it kind of makes sense. Other lessons that I've learned is feedback. So simple things in terms of understanding how to receive feedback from your team and other members that you might be close to within your working environment. But I think the biggest thing that I've learned is how to give feedback. And there's an art and science in terms of both. And I think that this is quite important in terms of my leadership journey, things that I've had to improve as part of my craft moving forward. And then when we bring it back to the people and coming back to the adaptability quotient, it's really understanding what makes people tick. And when you're able to do so and understand what drives and motivates a person, and then when you're able to tap into that, and then you tap into one person, and then all of a sudden you have this multiply effect of 5, 10, then you're tapping into a team's potential. And that's when you get to the exponential rate. So that for me is a lesson that I've learned as well. But I think that the other key thing is to always practice self-reflection as often as you can. Take a few steps back before moving forward. And then making sure that you have really good self-awareness of the situation as well, because that allows you just to read things within the moment. So this has been my journey to date in terms of lots of mistakes and lots of learnings along the way. But I also believe that you learn more by making mistakes than just by success.
Absolutely. Now, Kif, these are challenging times as the world stumbles from one crisis into the next. What is your advice for future leaders in terms of challenges? What challenges should they expect in their career? And how should they set out to overcome these career challenges?
Yeah, so there's change. Change is coming. Change is the only constant. Change is coming from a micro level. Change is coming from a macro level. So knowing that change is coming and it's the only constant, the question is, how do you adapt? And how do you build the skills to adapt? So for me, it does come down back to adaptability. So this is something that most leaders have to determine on their own or get the right counsel in terms of doing so. It also comes down to the fact that if you're wanting to build a high performance team, you are going to need to have a diverse team. So it's something that you've also got to embrace and understand. How do you make sure that you build a team that's quite diverse? The world's also changing, where we're moving from a job economy to a skills economy. And when you move to a skills economy, then you're tapping into individuals' potentials based on the skills that they have. And if you know the skills they have today and the skills they can offer into the future, then you're building a future-proof, resilient business. And that kind of makes you a lot more competitive. So you take that element of skills, you take the element of having a diverse team. And if you have the teams motivated and driven the right way, it gives you a really good competitive advantage as an organization, but also helps you as a leader increase your employee value proposition to have a team that you're building that wants to stay with the organization and stay with you as a leader. I think the other thing is that technology is there and it's rapidly changing. So you can't avoid things like AI and machine learning. You can't avoid other hype curves that do exist. So you need to find better ways to embrace it on a day-to-day basis and make it work for you. For example, with me, my son's going to turn 9 pretty soon, and he's been using his Amazon Alexa from the time he was 3. And I often give use cases on how he interacts with his Alexa every day, from playing music on Spotify to asking trivial questions about Black Panther or dinosaurs or other information he might want to learn about. But I get quite fascinated based on the questions he asks and the correlations he makes in his mind. So if we don't embrace technology, if we don't use it, it's quite hard to advocate about it as well, being a leader. And I think the other thing is that some of the challenges that leaders might face moving forward into the future is that there is a difference when you inherit a team and there's a difference when you're building a team. Both has its own set of nuances in terms of how to build a high performance team. So again, I think it goes back to understanding the team, listening, getting feedback, thinking about the right approach and how do you unlock value. That's going to be quite key. And I think that the challenge that future leaders will have in the future is, and maybe a way to mitigate it is, you've got to have the right counsel. So, and I believe in this concept that the five closest, you are the average of the five closest people around you. And there's data showing that 95% of your success or failure comes from the closest people that you have. So in your personal life and your professional life, I think leaders need to be quite more intentional about who they have around them, because that's going to lead to the future success of their leadership as well.
Now, Kif, if you were to design a curriculum for future leaders, what is maybe the number one or two skills that you would like to teach?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, you know, the one thing which we don't talk about is scenario planning. What if? And you know, I started programming when before I was 10, and we used to do this if then else statements on basic. But scenario planning for me is something that doesn't get considered enough. And if you think about that, most pilots go through this training in terms of understanding the weather conditions before they take a flight, before they graduate. Leaders don't get this opportunity to understand what if my business had a pivot? What if my business needed to grow? What if a new competitor had to come into the market? What if I lost my team? What if my team's not performing? What would I do? So I would think that that would be an awesome module in some type of curriculum to have leaders be more efficient and become more resilient. So that would be one. And I do think that the notion when it comes to how to be more adaptable and coming back to AQ is not as prevalent as it needs to be. So there's great content on leadership itself, on technology, and the rapid pace of change. But I think if it comes to scenario planning and potentially, you know, how to embrace EQ as a leader, I think those are two things that that should be part of the Swiss Army knife for the future of leaders.
Swiss Army knife, I love it. So, Kif, I know you mentored and you are mentoring many, many future leaders.
Yeah.
Would you mind maybe sharing a success story or two of an upcoming leader whom you mentored and who took your advice to heart?
Look, this topic is food for my soul. I'm really privileged to have worked with and served so many individuals for the past 20 years. And I started doing this in the first job that I had. There are two people that come to mind, two individuals. The one was somebody that worked for a partner of mine for a company that I worked for a few years ago. I saw this individual and I met this person. Within 30 seconds, I kind of knew that this person had greater potential than where they were at the moment. And it took one coffee chat for me to say, okay, I think you have something. And I said, let me try and help you. And this person at the time wasn't even looking for any help or looking for a career change. And I was able to take that person into another organization, help mentor them and grow their career. And they went from working from a very small organization to working for a multinational. And today, working at an EMEA level, creating a lot of change when it comes to technology, when it comes to leadership, speaking at multiple global events. And every time when this person speaks at an event or gets another accolade, I'm the first person that gets contacted, which is cool. And it's nice to hear and see. And also just to see that the impact it's made on this person's life professionally and personally as well. Person wasn't married before and got married and had kids and now has a family and is doing really well. So that's one, you know, of the stories for me that really stands out. But there's been lots of others. I think the key thing is that I always manage to work with people during different points of their career, depending on where they are and where they could be, and provide them with counsel in terms of how do you move forward and help them with any obstacles they might have to unlock their value.
And Kif, looking back over your career, are there any role models of leadership that you have encountered and maybe worked with that you feel future leaders should learn from?
Yeah, look, there's many. There's many of them that are out there. I think sometimes we always go to the popular names because we learn a lot more from those role models. But I think that sometimes we probably need to focus on role models we have in our lives that are not that popular. But obviously, if we look at, what late President Nelson Mandela has done for our country, and for what he's done in terms of his ability to change a nation. And I think Nick, you always talk about the World Cup, right? I mean, that was the time when I started watching rugby during the '95 World Cup. So it's those moments for me that matter, and knowing how effective change could take, or how effective change can be just based on one person, and changing the mindset and understanding that you can get through so many obstacles in life just by changing your mindset, being positive, and doing the right things. So Nelson Mandela, I think for me, stands out just based on so many different aspects. I won't mention names here, so I'll put them into a basket because some of them are quite controversial tech leaders. But there's a few tech leaders that have started really big technology companies that also stand out for me just based on a few principles. So, the one thing that I try and work with my team and other members of that I mentor and coach on are principles around focus and prioritization, things like time management. So whether you like him or not, Elon Musk has come up with this concept or spoken a lot about time boxing. And time boxing is a concept that you could prioritize your time and be a lot more effective in a short space of time, short intervals. Then, using productivity gains by doing certain tasks for longer. So a simple analogy might be that if you wanted to clean your house for a day, you could, but if you gave yourself 30 minutes, you could do it as well. So there's elements of that for me that stands out. I think Jeff Bezos does a lot when it comes to having highly effective meetings. He has the 2 pizza rule that if you've got more people in the room that can eat 2 pizzas, then you've got a problem. So he also talks about the fact that when you start your meetings, you got to go through a meeting brief, and you have to have those moments of silence before getting into the meeting. So that for me also stands out. And I think there's a lot that I pick up personally from so many different leaders. Again, some that are role models and some that are just not known in terms of having published books or being in the media. And those are great because the role models that you learn from are the people that are not the most popular sometimes. It could be the uncle down the road, or it could be the auntie at the shop that gives you advice when you're buying something from her. And those are the things that stick to me. So I'm in the process of creating my anecdotes of all my learnings. So I've just called it my life book. And every time I pick up something that I think, wow, that's cool, I just slot it in there. So, and then I try and every couple of months just go back to that and do a bit of a refresher.
So those the special moments and the special people you met.
Yeah.
Okay. So Kif, how can or where can our listeners follow you, and how can they connect with you?
Sure. So most of my content from a Workday perspective is completely on LinkedIn. So my dissertation is also published on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn will probably be the best way for anyone to reach out and to follow me as well.
Great. And last but not least, Kif, what is your message to the millions of learners out there who are looking to finish school, start a career? What are maybe 1 or 2 success principles they should keep in mind?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think Steve Jobs always spoke about the fact that you need to stay hungry and you need to stay foolish. And I think that those are core principles that exist. I do think that a healthy body leads to a healthy mind. But being healthy is also based on what you consume, whether it's on television or news or media. So I think that stay foolish, stay hungry. But if you focus on your body set, on being physically healthy, if you focus on your mindset in terms of where you can go, then you get ready for growth set, and then you have a platform in order to grow and unlock the true potential that you have.
Well, Kif, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom into the future of leadership and for inspiring so many future leaders.
Thank you. Appreciate it.